I wish the Kings could play the Utah Jazz every single night. It's always so much fun when the Kings play the Jazz. I believe this was their seventh win in a row against the Jazz. Have been so many just fun games and moments in recent memory. And even if you like go way back, that Rudy Gay game winner against the Jazz, but in more recent memory, you have the Keegan game where he went off from three. You just have a bunch of fun blowouts, including this game. You have the Kevin Huerter for the lead moment, and then you have that like De'Aaron Fox game-winning layup, and then Markkanen not getting his shot off in time on the game winner. It's very fun playing the Jazz. There are other bad teams that I don't really feel comfortable going into those games for the Kings. They don't play well against them. Portland's a good example of that. But when it comes to the Jazz, it always feels like it's comfortable. Now it wasn't necessarily comfortable last time the Kings played it, and I forgot to say that. What, Fox scored like 48 against them the last time they played, but that was with Kings having guys out in the second night of a back-to-back after an overtime game, and they still came away with a win. But this is now back-to-back 140 plus point performances for the Kings. The offense is rolling. Ever since Malik Monk has been inserted into the starting lineup, it's been rolling. And obviously there's a lot more to it than Monk being inserted into the lineup. Kevin Huerter is a massive part of it, but it does feel like the Kings offense is getting back on track, and that's very exciting. And maybe that game against Houston was the turnaround. But like Morgan Reagan said after the game on the broadcast when she was asked, "Are the Kings back? Do you feel like they're back?" And she was like, "I need to wait, a few more games." And, that's where I'm at as well, because it was just a couple games ago that the Kings were unable to close out a game that they should have won easily against the Grizzlies, where the Grizzlies did not play well. John Morant gets ejected. Kings had it in their hands and they weren't able to execute down the stretch. And so, of course, this isn't the game that's going to convince all of us that Kings are back, but it's a very good step in the right direction, and the Kings are just moving back in a positive direction. We still need to see them be able to close out closer games, but it's great that they haven't had to be in that position. They haven't had to be in close games against some of these teams, especially teams at the bottom of the standings, being able to have the killer instinct, not ease off the gas pedal. Because there was a point in that third quarter where I thought the Kings did ease off after the first timeout, and the Jazz started going on a run. They got it within 15. And then from there, the Kings like locked in, and it was just over. And so, yes, Utah's a horrible team. We need to see them be able to do it against better teams. But this is also a Utah team that beat the Blazers by 40 plus points and scored 141 points just a couple nights ago. So it's still a really good win, especially considering it's not the problem for the Kings hasn't always been they do it against bad teams and they don't do it against good teams. Like, that's not the problem, right? It's kind of like the Kings' worst enemy is themselves, and sometimes they do lose games to these bad teams or stay in dogfights with teams that they should have closed out. And so it's just a very positive sign to see them being able to close out a game like this, to see Kevin Huerter shooting so well. This game didn't start out very well offensively for the Kings in the first quarter. I think they started 2 for 10 from three. It was something around that. And the half court offense was awful for the Kings, I thought. Everything that the Kings were getting was in transition, and they were turning the Jazz over quite a bit, and they were even running after makes. The Jazz ended up with 20 turnovers in this game. And so it was the Kings pushing the pace and capitalizing there. But when it came to the half court offense, it didn't look great. I thought the Kings were kind of sloppy. I thought the Kings had a bunch of moments where they were kind of starting to generate advantages inside, and then they would just spray it out to the corner too early, where the Jazz weren't helping into the gaps. And a lot of that has to do with them being comfortable leaving Walker Kessler down low, But I just thought, like Fox in particular, he had some moments where he just felt like he could have kept going to the rim, and he sprays it out to like DeMar in the corner. And then I also thought DeMar was a little tentative to shoot. He made a long two, of course, foot on the line again, and he shot another three. Felt like he was passing up shots inside. So the Kings offense was just a little clunky. There were also some early shots, like Fox took a couple of just not great 3-point shots in transition off the dribble that I hate, especially since he takes them where it's like you could get that shot at any point, and he takes them when there's no one there to rebound for the Kings. So it's not even necessarily the shot itself, it's just like wait for rebounders. But the Kings still had a lead. It wasn't a big lead in that first quarter, but it was a lead because you had Keegan locking up Markkanen. That was fun to watch because Markkanen, he didn't play last game. He has this injury, but the same thing happened in the last game against Utah, where Markkanen was almost completely taken out of the game, and that's huge. I mean, it's going to be really tough for the Jazz to win when you're holding Markkanen to 2 for 9 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3, 8 points. And I actually thought Markkanen started this game off being pretty aggressive, and I didn't think he was aggressive the last time the Kings played him. So I thought we kind of just got bailed out by last game where Markkanen wasn't aggressive. This game, he actually was aggressive, but Keegan just did an amazing job on ball, and then the help was always there. So, and the closeouts were good as well. And that was the key to the offense because they were getting stops, they were generating turnovers, and while it wasn't the cleanest on the offensive end, they got enough done because they were running in transition. Monk especially, I thought, was really good pushing the pace. And the Kings weren't always great capitalizing at the rim in transition. I think it has just come to the point where I have to just accept that the Kings are never going to be a team who just always finishes at the rim in transition and makes the right play. And I think the main problem with the Kings in transition is just their lack of athletic wings, because it's tough when you have Fox and Monk and Keon and Huerter as these guards. It's like that's tougher to finish around the rim against if there's a big back. Keegan's not some super athletic guy that's gonna be going right at the defense, using his athleticism to finish. Same with DeMar, same with Sabonis. Like, we don't really have anyone that's like LeBron in transition. Obviously, no one's LeBron, but that type of like athlete that can finish at the rim. So some of the Kings' transition opportunities were a little weird. It took a Malik Monk behind the back pass for the Kings to actually score at the rim, but they ended up with getting threes off of transition opportunities. They got a little weird inside, but then somehow would come up with the ball and kick it out to Keegan, to Monk, and they were knocking down those shots. I got a little worried when the Kings subbed out Keegan and Markkanen stayed in the game, and we put Colby in to guard Markkanen. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, I guess that is a good matchup for Colby because Markkanen's not really going to beat him for foot speed, and that's kind of Colby's weakness defensively. So Colby's a very strong defender that can hold his ground, and he did well. And later in the game, he got a block against Markkanen. So I thought he did a really solid job, and he played 20 minutes. Obviously, there were like 8 minutes of garbage time, so he played those. But I thought Colby was pretty solid against Markkanen. And then Fox had a nice jumper to end the first quarter on a high note and be up by 3. And then the second quarter starts. Huerter is still on fire. There were a few moments I thought the Kings and Fox in particular kind of missed him in transition. I'm like, get him the ball, especially in transition. And I thought there were actually quite a few times where Fox had moments with guys open that he didn't find. But then I looked down and he has 9 assists in 31 minutes. So like he couldn't have missed that many. 9 assists, 1 turnover. But I think that more speaks to how many just open shots the Kings were generating that they could miss some passes. Fox's vision has never been, he's not Tyrese Halliburton vision, but he's still had a good playmaking game, especially because of just the volume of open looks that he was creating by getting in the middle of the defense. And the bench came in and gave really nice contributions. Obviously, Kevin Huerter. But no Isaac Jones in this game. I think he was sick is what it was. But you had Keon coming in obviously and giving good contributions. He immediately forced 2 turnovers, knocked down a three, got an offensive rebound, and put it back in. And then you also had Orlando Robinson come in. And with Orlando, it wasn't the greatest game. His finishing inside was really what was rough, but he continues to show that he's a really nice passer. The one thing offensively that he really needs to be able to do is just finish over players, because there were a lot of times where Fox was finding him inside. They were running the pick and roll. He was getting smaller defenders onto Orlando Robinson. Fox would find him inside, and Orlando wasn't able to finish. And so it's like Orlando, he's got the thing down that most bigs don't have down, which is the playmaking from the perimeter. And then he just needs to get the actual big man thing down, finishing inside. But really solid contributions from the bench. And then starters came back in. And DeMar, he kept just like passing up shots. And I'm like, man, get going, look for your own shot. And then he heard me and just started absolutely dominating. Made 2 middies in a row, then drew the defense in. Sabonis flashes inside. DeMar finds him. DeMar hit a few other shots. The only real problem that happened down the stretch of that second quarter was Keegan picking up his third foul. Because Keegan had been so good defensively, picked up his third foul, had to go to the bench. But like I said, Colby stepped in nicely, and the Kings were just killing the Jazz in transition. Sabonis going coast to coast for a layup in transition, and then good ball movement leads to a Sabonis corner, or no, I don't know if it was a corner three, but just three, a Sabonis three. The only thing keeping the Jazz in this game was John Collins from three. Kings got it up to 20. Collins hits 2 straight threes to cut it to 14. And there was a crazy sequence at the end of the second quarter where the Jazz just kept missing inside. The Kings they couldn't come up with the rebound, but also, I mean, they kept contesting it and forcing misses. So they did enough, and it was good effort from the Kings. And then they ended the half on a high note with great ball movement that started with Fox and ended with Fox inside. The Kings just had so many instances after the first quarter. The first quarter was sloppy. After that, there were so many very solid plays, if anyone knows that reference. And it was just great team play all around, even on the defensive end. There was a play where Fox gambled for a steal from behind like he does. So whoever the guard was, I can't remember who it was, gets in front of him. But then it's Monk and Colby on that side, and they both switch and kind of scramble. Fox peels off and switches to the guy on the wing, and they figured it out. And that's kind of one of those instances where you don't play perfect defense, but it's like you just got to scramble and figure it out and be connected defensively. And it's kind of just one of those like chemistry moments where they figured it out on the fly. And it was nice to see the Kings come out in the third quarter, even being up 17, but they were still flowing offensively. Sabonis had like 2 possessions in a row with Gortat screens to get guys open at the rim. He was doing such a good job of sealing guys off inside to get his guards easy layups inside. And it again was John Collins' jumpers keeping them in the game, but then the Kings did force 2 misses off good contests. They kind of focused in on that. You know, DeMar was getting torched by John Collins, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing when you have to put Keegan on Markkanen. So then DeMar has to guard John Collins, and this is kind of the weakness of the Kings lineup, where you have Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan. So it's like, if you had Keon Ellis maybe instead of Malik Monk, that's another defensive guy, and you could switch around who's guarding who. In this game, it wouldn't have really mattered just because of the size of the Jazz. You're not going to put Keon on Markkanen or Collins, so it wouldn't have really mattered, which kind of just, that's another flaw with the Kings roster, is they don't have a wing that they can put in there when the other team has 2 guys that have size in Markkanen and Collins, obviously with Kessler in there as well. But that was pretty much the only thing going wrong for the Kings in this game. After the first timeout in that third quarter, the Kings kind of came out, and they weren't totally locked in defensively. They definitely took their foot off the gas, allowed multiple open threes, just guys leaving three-point shooters. Monk just leaving John Collins. Fox leaving a corner three-point shooter. So it got the Jazz back into it, and the Jazz went to this kind of zone where they just dropped Kessler super deep against Sabonis, and it was like mixed results. Kings scored on it, also didn't score on it. They didn't go to it for that long, so it was hard to tell exactly how effective it was. But the Jazz got within 15 because John Collins was just torching DeMar, and they kind of let off defensively. Keontae George got 2 straight layups with like no resistance. So it was just kind of frustrating that the Kings weren't putting them away. Mike Brown calls a timeout. They came out of that timeout and they just locked in defensively pretty much for the rest of the quarter. But those first few possessions, especially, Huerter had a great closeout. Keegan had a great closeout. Huerter on his closeout just kept going and leaked out for an easy dunk. DeMar came up with a steal off good Keegan defense inside. And the Kings capitalized on all of those moments on the offensive end by running in transition, playing fast, and it was just over. Huerter had multiple dunks on leak outs after his good closeouts, and Huerter was amazing defensively in this game, along with his offense. And so it was just nice to see the Kings come out and just, right when the Jazz maybe were getting a little hope that they could come back into this game, Kings just shut the door immediately. And it was just beautiful basketball on both ends, with the ball movement on one end, the fast pace, sharing the ball style, and on the defensive end, the rotations, the rim protection inside, getting hands on every ball, it seemed like. It was such a fun game to watch because it was just like perfect basketball in so many moments. And to end that quarter, you had a Fox finding Huerter in the corner for 3. Then you had Fox finding Huerter again on the baseline out of bounds play under the rim because they expected him to go to the corner to shoot the 3. A great pass to find him under the rim. And then Fox ends it with the 3-pointer. So it went from 15 to 31 real quick. And then in the fourth quarter, we knew everything was going right when Huerter gets a block. It goes to Orlando Robinson, who's running the break. He finds Huerter again for a long wing 3 that like rattles around and goes in. So Huerter block, Orlando Robinson running the break and finding Huerter for 3. And then, of course, you have the Doug McDermott moment where he just comes in, starts off 6 for 6 from 3. And that's the shooting we expected from Dougie McBuckets because he hasn't been shooting well this season, just like every other King. And so I feel like this continues to show that shooting is a team thing, where when you see one guy starts to get them to go down, then everyone kind of starts to hit him. The Kings won this game without hitting that many threes. They put the game away and they hadn't hit that many threes. It was like 10 or 12, something like that. And then they just poured it on in garbage time, ending up going 22 for 44. So it looks like it was just the 3-point shooting, but it was more than that offensively for this win because it was the fourth quarter where they hit a million threes when the game was already over. You had J-Mac hitting 2 threes, Colby hit a 3, everyone was eating. The only guys that didn't hit threes were Isaiah Crawford, who came in late, Alex Len, Orlando Robinson, he went 0 for 2, and then DeMar went 0 for 2, although he hit one of his classic toe on the line shots. Going through the individual stat lines, starting with Domantas Sabonis, 8 for 13 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3. He had 19 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, a block, and he always has a fun time against the Jazz, even though the Jazz start so much size and length. Starting Kessler, Collins, Markkanen, but it just doesn't matter. And he was a big part of the offensive rebounding for the Kings, and he just didn't force things this game, and it just kind of came to him. I love the moments where he gets the offensive rebound, and that's what kind of gets him the good position in the post. Because it can be hard to get him into good positioning in the post, and I don't like when they just straight up post him up. But when he finds himself in those positions inside in the post, off an offensive rebound or off, some other sort of play where they find him. That's when I like him being in the post and being able to finish, because that's when the defense isn't in a position to react, because they're all trying to scramble, figure out what they're doing, and then Sabonis has the time without the defense coming at him to be able to just go to his post moves against Walker Kessler. DeMar took over end of the second quarter, midway to the end of the second quarter. His defense was pretty bad against John Collins. I mean, that's just not a good matchup for him when John Collins is hitting threes like he was, but then also Collins can obviously beat him off the dribble. That's just a matchup that we don't want to have, but we, decided that Markkanen was the guy we want to take out of this game. We put Keegan on him so that it lets John Collins eat, but that was the only guy that really got it going. But solid 18.4 assist game for DeMar. Keegan, 25 minutes. Oh, that's also one thing. Only guy over 30 minutes is De'Aaron Fox at 31. But Keegan, 3 for 5 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3. So 7 points. The stat line isn't huge. 2 blocks, a steal, 4 rebounds. Got in a little bit of foul trouble early on there, but his defense was so good, and he took all the right shots within the offense and had a couple of nice moves inside to get himself deep and get buckets and create space, like against Walker Kessler, just putting his body into him and finishing over him. But he just wasn't needed much, and he was our defensive guy this game. Fox, 9 for 16 from the field, only 1 for 5 from 3 and 2 for 4 from the free throw line. Kings only shot 8 free throws as a team, and they shot 5 for 8. But that definitely did not matter. 21 points, 9 assists, only 1 turnover. The Kings combined for only 8 turnovers. They had more steals than turnovers. 10 steals, 8 turnovers. I loved when Fox was pushing the pace, getting inside. Didn't love when he was taking those transition threes, because just such good things happened when he was getting inside and opening things up for others and kind of getting the offense started and getting the ball movement started. And it kind of all started with him offensively. And then you had Malik, 7 for 15 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3 with 16 points and only 3 assists. Very low for him as of late, but just a solid game from him. The bench is really where it gets fun. Kevin Huerter, 22 minutes and 26 points, 10 for 14 from the field, 2 dunks, 6 for 9 from 3, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block, 0 turnovers, a team high plus 35. Earlier today, before this game, I watched a video, a compilation of, I believe it was every clutch shot, within 5 points with 5 minutes left in the game or overtime. Every single one of his shots from the, 22-23 season. And there were a lot of those types of shots, and he shot almost 50%, most of them threes, but also getting inside as well. I was just like, where did this player go? He looked so confident. He was so important to this team. He's hitting those sidestep threes off the handoffs, but also just getting inside and scoring in so many different ways. And if we could just even get a little bit of that player back, this team just offensively is going to be so, so good. And so that's what we've seen recently. And hopefully he is really settling into this bench role. But, just like as we need to see a few more games as a team, we also need to see a few more games from him as an individual like this before we can really buy into it. But, it was just such a good game on both ends from him. He could do no wrong. He was getting inside and finishing over Walker Kessler. He was hitting the transition open threes. He was hitting the contested threes on the wing. Like, he was doing it in every different way that you want to see him do it, and that he did it 2 seasons ago. Then you have Colby, who played 20 minutes, and Colby was great in terms of rebounding the ball. He had 5 rebounds, 1 offensive rebound. He was going after everything. He drew a loose ball foul going for an offensive rebound. He also was staying in front of guys really well. Him and Huerter, they're not the greatest moving laterally defensively. and they were going up against a guy like Isaiah Collier, and they were staying in front, forcing Collier to 0 points. Like that was kind of the interesting matchup I was watching in kind of garbage time there. But yeah, a great job from Colby to stay in front of guys and contest shots, get a block on Markkanen. He had 2 steals. And this is kind of what we wanted from Colby, where it's 3 points. That's not a whole lot. And that was in late in garbage time with a three, which is good. 1 for 1 from three. That's what we like to see. 5 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, 1 block. Like filling the box score. That's the type of player that he needs to be. I still feel like I need to see a little more of him, finding ways to score. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just like somehow finding a way to score around the rim on one of those moments where he's fighting for a ball, gets an offensive rebound. And, he turned around, went for a floater, missed it. So he's got to find some way to make an impact because he needs so much space to be confident shooting the ball from three, it seems like. And so he's got to find like some other way to really get involved offensively. So he definitely needs to show me a little bit more before I'm, confident in him as a rotation player. But it's definitely a good start and better than kind of what we'd been seeing recently. But for him, it's kind of like we need to see it against better opponents when there are going to be more offensive threats on the floor to see how he really handles that defensively is what I'm interested in there. Keon Ellis, 16 minutes, had 5 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals. Like I said, he comes in and he just makes an immediate impact on winning every time, it seems like. He's always going to find a way to knock some ball away and get a transition opportunity going. And that's what the Kings needed in this game because, like I said, they could not score in the half court to start. So they needed those transition opportunities. He provided them. He went 1 for 2 from three, offensive rebounds, just making the right plays, which can be seen through his 5 assists because obviously he's not really handling the ball in the pick and roll, but he's still coming away with 5 assists, which just means he's making the right passes as the offense is moving. Orlando Robinson, 12 minutes, 1 for 5 from the field. That's not what you want to see. 0 for 2 from 3, 4 rebounds, but he had 2 assists and 2 points. He just has to figure out how to be more effective when he's catching the ball, when he's rolling to the basket. He just has to be more of an inside threat. Feels like he kind of wants to be an outside threat, shooting the three. And, obviously he didn't make one in this game, and hopefully he can be more consistent in that. But he's a good passer out of the short roll, and he's a good passer when he's trying to operate the dribble handoffs, and he's shown the ability to find guys. He was running the fast break, like I said, just dribbling it straight up the middle of the floor and finding Kevin Huerter. But I want to see him make more of an impact on both sides of the floor, really, in the paint, blocking shots and affecting shots around the rim more, maybe, more of a dominant rebounder and being able to really take advantage of smaller guys inside when he's catching the ball down there. But he had some positive contributions in this game. And then of course Doug McDermott, 8 minutes, 6 for 7 from 3 for 18 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks. He had a turnover. That's a nice stat line. That's what we like to see. 18 points, 1 turnover, nothing else. And obviously he was just coming in and shooting the threes. But what I really liked about it was how he made a few in a row, but he was still giving the ball up. And it was kind of the thing, like, you give the ball up to get the ball back. That Steph Curry philosophy. When the shot wasn't there, he immediately was moving it. The ball was just never in his hands for more than a second. And on most of his catches, he practically wasn't even catching it. He was just like batting it back to the player that was passing it to him. The ball got out of his hands, whether he was shooting it or passing it, so quickly. And the Kings' offense in garbage time looked elite because of how much gravity he had, but he also wasn't just jacking up bad shots. The crowd wanted him to, but he wasn't. And he was just getting off the ball, continuing to move. That opened up things for everyone. So it was very fun to watch. He's a smart player offensively. He knows how to move without the ball. And he hasn't had too much time lately in meaningful minutes. But, when you see he goes 6 for 7, you're like, okay, he's still there. He still got it from three, and he could still step in when needed. And then the other guy I'll talk about is Isaiah Crawford, just because he came in for 5 minutes, and he was just kind of out there. But it's his NBA debut, so I was very happy to see that he never really had an opportunity to shoot. I was hoping at some point, it would fall to him after everyone was attracted to McDermott, but it never quite did. But I'm glad that he got in here for 5 minutes. It's kind of a shame that the two games where the Kings decided to actually blow people out, and in this one especially play their starters so few minutes, it's like now we have a big break. We have a bunch of days until we play on the 12th in New Orleans, and then after that, the 16th against Denver, and just these next few games, we have so much time in between the games. It's like earlier in the season, we were playing 5 games in 7 nights. Why couldn't we have, gotten this rest in that time? But it's still good to take care of business. The next game on Thursday in New Orleans. Brandon Ingram just went down for New Orleans after they were getting kind of healthier. I mean, New Orleans, they are so unlucky. It's unfortunate. But the Kings got to take advantage here. They could win 4 of these last 5 games. I just keep looking back at that Memphis game, and I'm like, man, the Houston game was kind of the turning point, but then just like a quick hiccup on the Memphis game. It's like, we should have won that. And that's why I'm not, confident yet. I need to see a close game against another good team, or any team really. But look, New Orleans may be beat up. They may be 5-20. They still got CJ McCollum, who doesn't miss against the Kings, who has a vendetta against the Kings. You got to key in on him. They still got DeJounte Murray. I was watching them against the Knicks when they didn't have anyone, and they were just getting absolutely blown out by 30 in the first quarter. But they still got some guys. Okay, so just I don't want this to be a trap game. There's no real key to it other than just come out with intensity, because you don't have to come out with some elaborate game plan on either end of the court. It's just be locked in. Don't think you're just going to run over them, because the Spurs, they won against the Pelicans tonight, but they didn't run over them. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. As always, shout out to the members of this channel, No Rain and Joe Mama, for the support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.